Hello guys, Zane here. Today we're going to be looking at how the stock market performed under every U.S. president since Truman. Now, if you know me, I understand that the stock market actually does better under Democratic rule than Republican-aided rule. And so we're going to actually see the results from this article. Of course, the article will be in the description if you want. So Biden versus Trump, some speculate that the future of the republic hinges on the outcome of the next election, but for smart investors, it doesn't really matter who wins. Conventional wisdom says that those liberal Dems are generally bad for the economy and the stock market because of their big government tendencies, while physically conservative Republicans are good. This widely accepted belief is actually fake news. If you look at data going back to the end of World War II, stock markets do perform better under Democrats than under Republicans. That's a well-known fact, but it does not imply cause and effect, says Jeremy Siegel, the Russell E. Palmer Professor of Finance at the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, from 1952 through June 2020, analyzed real stock market returns under Democrats have been 10.6% compared with 4.8% for Republicans. With the 2020 election less than 4 months away, some investors are fretting about the pros and cons of a Trump versus Biden presidency. A Democratic sweep would almost certainly mean a rollback of Trump's massive corporate tax cuts, a negative for stocks, but additional economic stimulus, which the market apparently loves despite deficit implications. The stability of the China trade front would be a big positive. So the president, political party, years in office, and S&P return percent. According to Siegel Arthur of the 1994 investment classic Stocks for the Long Run, Wall Street obsession with politics is mostly misplaced. Bull markets and bear markets come and go, and it's more to do with business cycles than presidents. In some ways, the current environment has characteristics of the existential threat faced by George W. Bush post-2001 replaced terrorism with pandemic. The civil unrest that plagued the Johnson and Nixon administration and Ronald Reagan's trade war with Japan in the 1980s. In an effort to more closely examine the relationship between the actions of a president and the direction of stocks, Forbes has analyzed their stock market performances, including dividends dating back to Harriet Truman. Using data from the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, we've also noted for each president the number of expansions and recessions that began during their terms. In some cases, like the presidency of Bill Clinton, who was in office during one of the most impressive periods of economic prosperity and bull markets in history, you won't see an expansion listed. That's because credit is awarded to the president who was in office during its inception, which in this case was George H.W. Bush. We also include the ratio of gross federal debt to GDP for the final year of each presidency. The winner among presidents for the best cumulative stock market return is William J. Clinton with nearly 210%. The worst, George W. Bush with negative 40%. Uncertainty has been the biggest disruptor of markets by far. In September 1955, for example, stocks dove 6.5% in a single day, with Eisenhower suffered a sudden heart attack after a golf outing with Kennedy when Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963. The immediate fall off was 3%. In both instances, stocks promptly recovered. Market gyrations aside, investors can take comfort in the fact that in the long run, buy and hold worked best. A 1,000 investment in the index of large U.S. stocks in January 1945 would have compounded at an annual total return of 11% and would have been worth $2.3 million by the end of 2019. So, okay, first term, second term. It get bad, and then it abruptly got good, and then it started slowly going down. Coming out of the Second World War, wartime production levels off and job losses ensured as a result. Truman faced a recession and bear market early in his term. There was excess in the economy for so many people returning from the war and jobs not being available. It was almost inevitable we were going to hit a recession, says James Stack, president of Investec Research and Stack Financial Management. The economy bounced back quickly as consumer and business confidence returned, but Truman then faced another recession, albeit brief, in 1949 after his Fair Deal economic reforms, which raised the minimum wage and tried to guarantee equal employment rights. Economic expansion 2, recession 1, debt to GDP 71%. Dwight D. Eisenhower, Republican. Oh, so it starts off real bad, and then it gets good, and then it goes straight down. And in the second term, it got up, and then it went down. So while the vastly popular President Eisenhower helped obtain the truce in the Korean War and worked to ease Cold War tensions, America still experienced its share of anxiety during his term. His tenure, thanks to Red Scare tactics. Many people say how great and unexciting the Eisenhower years were, but I beg to differ, say Sam Stovall, chief investment strategist of CFRA. America was petrified. Duck and Cover was our favorite theme song, he adds, noting that the Soviet Union acquired the hydrogen bomb during this period, and Americans were dealing with McCarthyism and the Wisconsin senators' hearings at the same time. Eisenhower faced 3 recessions during his 2 terms in office, one in the beginning, middle, and end of his tenure. The recession of 1953 and 1958 were in large part tied to more restrictive monetary policy from the Federal Reserve, while other recessions started in 1960 after the Feds had doubled interest rates since 1958. Economic expansion 2, recession 3, debt to GDP 54%. John F. Kennedy. It's kind of funny how it goes from Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican, Democrat, Republican. So first term, it was 26.9%, and then we went to, he only had 1 term, and then it went from that to negative 8.7% to 16.3%. President John F. Kennedy was elected in a close-run affair, campaigning under the slogan like "Getting America Moving Again" and "A Time for Greatness." The economy remained sluggish and unemployment remained high at 6.8% when he took office. The one bear market under his term was triggered by nothing other than Kennedy getting in a pissing match with U.S. Steel over prices. Says Stovall, Wall Street didn't like the government dictating what private companies could do. Toward the end of his term, JFK launched a bold domestic program, including income and corporate tax cuts to spur economic growth before his tragic assassination on November 22nd, 1963. Economic expansion 1, recession 0, debt to GDP 49%. Another Democrat, so Lyndon B. Johnson. I think this is kind of the same for all the Democrats. It starts good, and then it goes down to the negatives, and then it goes up, and then it's a slight recession. President Johnson was sworn in aboard Air Force One before flying back to Washington on the day of Kennedy's assassination, and the Texan quickly moved to pass JFK's tax cuts and civil rights legislation. Amid rising inflation and interest rates and rising civil unrest associated with the civil rights movement, stocks entered a bear market in 1966. And this is what gets me mad, because the Black Lives Matter movement is like every other civil rights movement we had. Like, the women's rights movement was violent. Some were peaceful, yes, but there was a lot of violence. A lot of these Civil War movements, we didn't just march. Stonewall, I believe that was for, what civil rights was that? Because there was the Stonewall, that was one. And then, I can't remember. I remember reading it though. So I'm like, every civil rights movement, there was violence. There was, because people respond faster to violence than they would just normal protest. Richard M. Nixon. Oh, um, who? I actually liked Richard Nixon. Well, he sucks at economics. The economy, monetary tightening of the end of Johnson's tenure resulted in a mild recession from 1969 to 1970 after President Nixon took office. The U.S. economy was plagued by stagflation, high inflation, slow economic growth, and high unemployment. In 1970, a year before taking the U.S. completely off the gold standard, Nixon, by executive order, imposed a freeze on wages and prices in an effort to battle inflation. So we're just going to quickly go to the others. General R. Ford. Okay, this one's better. He did better. You go. So he started bad, and he actually pretty persistent. It's not bad. I mean, Carter. Wow. Okay, this one pretty good. They're getting better. Ronald W. Reagan. Oh no, it was Ronald Reagan I liked. Never mind. Okay. Getting very, very close. I mean, still good. George H.W. Bush. I also liked this president. Okay, George W. Bush actually didn't get any of the negatives. He almost did. First term, 92. Not bad. I mean, it'd be better if he could not have it drop so much, like rise and fall. William J. Clinton. George W. Bush. Oh, don't talk about that. Barack Obama. Let's go. Okay, not that bad. We got a big drop, and then it goes up. It drops into negatives, and then it goes up. Okay. And then is Trump on here? Ooh. Oh, you see, this is the problem with Trump's presidency, is because we were doing great off of Obama, right? And then he drops it, and then he'll do this like small little thing to get the economy back up, but it doesn't stay up. You see, and then it just drops again. And that was 120. Huh? January 20. I'm so confused. We're in 2020, so it's not 2021. January 20th, 2020. The United States was already 8 years into the longest economic recovery in history when President Trump was elected. The market jumped right after he won the 2016 election on hopes that a Republican president would lower taxes and ease business regulations. Trump obliged earlier on in his presidency, despite Trump's claims to the contrary by no stretch of the imagination, as the market's done the best in history, says Stovall. Major developments like the U.S.-China trade war and the coronavirus pandemic have been a lot for the market to handle, with much of the country dealing with lockdowns amid rising coronavirus cases in the United States plunged into a recession in February 2020. Now, if he would have took steps, we wouldn't have been in lockdown and the economy wouldn't have been that bad. And he started the China trade war. So I'm not going to say, oh, well, it was out of our hands, because no, it was in our hands. And it was Republicans that were being little babies about wearing a mask because it's uncomfy. Well, sweetie, a seatbelt's uncomfy, but you still wear that. Okay, so wearing a mask because they're heartless people. Ugh. And like literally stayed home for a month. Everybody only went to get groceries, wear a mask, take precautions, we wouldn't be in this mess. Like literally, Trump We need Joe Biden. Democrats, as this article stated, do better with the economy, so vote blue. Settle for Biden.